Justin Baldoni's lawyer, Brian Friedman, grilled on Blake Lively in contentious interview.
Blake Lively was just publicly humiliated by Justin Baldwin's attorney, who revealed how she used unfounded accusations against him as a tool to ruin his career.
Can you say with certainty that your client did not harass her?
I can say that with certainty that my client is one of the most honorable people I've ever met.
He disclosed her covert interactions with the media, demonstrating that she orchestrated sensational stories to sway public opinion.
You don't want to believe that execs at the very tippity top are being essentially threatened or bullied or coerced or extorted and by a couple like Ryan and Blake or like Taylor Swift, right?
Friedman also revealed how Lively put media outlets in danger of controlling the story.
He sat down and chatted in a new podcast interview, and he had a lot to say.
Lively began this case by sobbing over alleged harassment on set, but Friedman flatly contradicted her whole account.
Friedman wanted to emphasize that Justin Baldoni is truly a good guy, and that he was not happy with all of the negative press that Blake Brown was getting around the release of their movie, It Ends With.
In addition to taking the blows, Baldwini is retaliating with a $400 million defamation countersuit. To be honest, I hope he drags this out until March 2026, so we can see Lively's PR house of cards fall apart in real time.
So even in her own CRD complaint and in her own initial filed complaint, it says that everything was fine from that point on. Okay. So now we're really limited to nothing more ultimately than was there a smear campaign.
Yes. Okay.
And let's face it, Blake believed she was untouchable. She believed she could use harassment to get the New York Times to do her dirty work, and Hollywood would automatically support her. The trouble is that she became overconfident.
In the CRD complaint and in the first filing of the lawsuit with the Southern District of New York, the allegations in the complaint say once the 17-point list was agreed to, everything from then on was fine. There were no issues.
Friedman just revealed that this entire situation was a well-planned public relations assault on Baldwini. The New York Times, WME, and some of the biggest names in Hollywood were all conspiring to try to ruin Baldwini's career before he had a chance to defend himself. And guess what? It might be blowing up in Blake's face.
Filing of the complaint was done in coordination with the Times. I don't have evidence of that, but I assume that the story was timed to go right when it was filed.
Because people pay attention when a lawyer like Friedman speaks, and the New York Times is currently looking suspicious as heck.
Out of those 15 hours, a lot of those are sleep hours.
Okay.
For those that sleep. A lot of those are on a holiday weekend on a Friday night. Yes. At 9 o'clock at night for those.
That is, I will give you that. That is a shady move. If you're working on a story for months and you're giving somebody notice on a Friday night, that's a pretty shady move.
Friedman disclosed how the Nat waited months for the ideal moment to publish their hit article. And then all of a sudden, on a Friday night over a holiday weekend, they did just that, giving Baldoni 15 hours to respond, oh, how kind, to a well-planned career assassination. Can you imagine being that blatantly dishonest and still passing as a respectable newspaper?
The baby wombat. It's a real sad moment here where this U.S. influencer takes a video of her running across the street to grab the baby wombat, rip it away from its little mother there, just for a quick...
We're apparently living in some weird medieval fantasy where Blake Lively believes she is a Game of Thrones character. Friedman revealed 170 pages of internal messages in which Blake planned against Baldoni. And let me tell you, this woman isn't just manipulative, she is delusional. Now let's move on to Blake's most absurd stunt in this whole mess, the infamous dragon texts.
In that massive upload of documents, Blake leverages her friendship with Taylor Swift against Baldoni. She says, I'm like Khaleesi.
She really referred to herself as Kesey, yes, Kesey, and claimed that her dragons, also known as Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift, were her defense against Baldoni. I'm having trouble telling if this is an HBO show or a lawsuit.
Game of Thrones, and my husband Ryan and my best friend Taylor are my dragons. They inspire me, they support me. Well, Taylor has been silent. Not a peep from Taylor.
In that enormous document upload, I'm like, Kai, and you know what's hilarious? Taylor Swift's silence, that's right. Blake continues, using her bond with Swift against Baldoni. Taylor Swift, the author of a Grammy-winning album about a disastrous date, hasn't mentioned this lawsuit at all. Perhaps this is because she doesn't think Blake's nonsense is real.
Taylor has been silent. Not a peep from Taylor. You know what I mean? Look, question for the women out there. If you tell your best friend you were sexually harassed by a guy, wouldn't you hope that that dragon would breathe a little fire on that jerk in your defense?
Swift is renowned for having given Kesha $250,000 when she was battling a genuine case of abuse. But now that her purported closest buddy is a victim of crickets, I'm not sure what else will reveal how ridiculous Blake's tale is.
Morris's CEO, Ari Emanuel, made it seem like a moral act of loyalty. Like that exists in Hollywood. He heaped praise on Ryan and Blake as soulfully beautiful people. Flawless, really.
Not one word from Taylor, but you understand what I mean. I have a question for all the ladies out there. If you tell your closest friend that a guy sexually harassed you, wouldn't you expect that dragon would do something to defend you? In Tori. Relation to Hollywood. Let's discuss WME's betrayal of Baldoni. This is where things start to become murky. WME handled both Lively and Baldoni, but as soon as the case surfaced, they abandoned Baldoni like a bad stock investment and went straight to Lively and Reynolds, where you can guess who was responsible. Ari Emanuel, the CEO of WME, is a man who performs Hollywood power moves as if he were playing 4D chess. Emanuel publicly ridiculed Baldoni on a podcast, labeling him a nasty guy and hailing Blake and Ryan as Hollywood's ideal, flawless, soulfully, gorgeous marriage. If this guy had any less nuance, he would be a villain in Marvel.
That's a pretty shady move. Doesn't make it defamation, but it does make it a little skeezy.
But the real joke here is Emanuel's phony moral high ground. He claimed that if the accusations against Baldwini are true, he's a horrible man. If that's Hollywood speak, I don't know what's true, but I'll say whatever protects my money. We all know why he's supporting Lively and Reynolds, because Ryan Reynolds makes WME far more money than Baldwini ever could. And the moment it came down to choosing profit over justice, Baldwini was out.
I see him as somebody who understands, yeah, this is super shady, and it was definitely a coordinated campaign. It doesn't mean that it's illegal, but for the public's knowledge, it's not really necessarily important whether or not it was illegal. It's who deserves the justice here.
Naturally, Blake couldn't stop with PR stunts and media manipulation. She needed to launch a full-fledged smear campaign. Fredman revealed how her PR team, led by Leslie Sloan, collaborated directly with the New York Times to time the publication of their attack article. This wasn't about the truth. Rather, it was about career assassination, and the Times was more than happy to comply, claiming to be an impartial news source. But in reality, they were planning a hit piece on Baldoni while feigning to report the facts. To top it off, Balon's team is investigating defamation lawsuits against the New York Times for purposefully harming his reputation, which is commendable, as someone needs to hold these media puppets accountable for serving as PR mercenaries for celebrities who pay them enough.
In fact, says his lawyer, the publicists are saying, we had nothing to do with this whatsoever. And there's other people that say the same thing, and that organically this press was coming out.
Where does this go from here? Will Floyd settle? Fredman stated that Floyd will not settle until his name is completely cleared, and I sincerely hope he drags Blake, her PR team, and all complicit media outlets through the legal mud for as long as it takes, because the second Floydie lets this go, the worse. Hollywood discovers that with only a few stage tears and a cleverly timed publicity campaign, individuals like Blake Lively can get away with wrecking a man's career.
Basement Banisher's legal team have referred to her as a victim repeatedly, and they've referred to him as a predator and a sexual harasser repeatedly.
And let's face it, Blake is losing not only the legal battle, but also the support of the public. She believed she could use the Me Too movement as a weapon for her own benefit, but now even die-hard Swifties are disparaging her story. She had assumed that Hollywood would support her, but instead, half of the industry is acting as though she doesn't exist. She believed she could play the victim, but now her own texts reveal that she is the mastermind behind a smear campaign.
His attorney responded, I actually think that a lot of people are victims here. I think Justin is a victim here. I think Melissa Nathan is a victim. I think Jed Wallace is a victim. I think Jen Abel is a victim. I think Steve Sorowitz is a victim.
And that's the truth. No matter how many public relations techniques she uses, how many successful pieces she commissions, or how hard she tries to play the innocent victim, the receipts are out there, and Fredman is making sure of it. Blake, on the other hand, is discovering the hard way that in Hollywood, the truth always comes out.
His lawyer said, quote, my client has no intent of harming Miss Lively in any way. My clients have a right to defend themselves. That is in no way abusing the victim.
Since Blake Lively already believes she is Kesey, her PR disaster is only getting better. At this point, she might as well hold a press conference in full medieval armor, but her entire victim act is now disintegrating more quickly than her credibility. And Justin Baldwin's attorney, Brian Friedman, is ensuring it.
Is one thing, but does it rise to the legal definition of harassment? And the answer to that is no.
Seems courteous enough. But Fredman quickly changed his mind and said that victim is subjective when he was questioned about whether he had truly called Lively a victim.
I am so glad that Judge Lyman did not issue a gag order in this case.
Translation: Blake's entire legal defense is a farce because, if she is truly a victim, why is she the one initiating a coordinated smear campaign against Baldoni? The last time I looked, victims aren't deliberately destroying someone's career by leaking texts and using the media as a weapon. You either need justice or you need retribution.
And when you look at the harassment and what you're talking about, there were certain things that were alleged in the pleadings that she calls harassment, and that will be the subject of that matter.
And Blake is obviously seeking retribution, which is the reason her case as a whole is teetering in a legal limbo that is less solid than her acting abilities. You can't be the victim and the V at the same time. Blake picks a lane. Lively and her merry army of public relations manipulators have spent months convincing the world that she is a defenseless victim of harassment. But Fredman just revealed that she is the mastermind behind an industry-wide takedown attempt.
Now, he said Lively and Reynolds are good people. They've been in the business for decades and have never had any bad press about them and all the people that work with them.
However, it gets worse for her because Hollywood has its own set of rules. And when power politics enter the conversation, things get really dirty. Let's talk about Ari Emanuel, the CEO of William Morris Endeavor WME, who decided on his own that Baldwin wasn't worth protecting. However, as soon as this lawsuit began, he made sure that Baldwin was fired, just like the failed Netflix reboot from the previous season.
So Ari goes on to say, if it's true what they're saying in that allegation, by the way, if it's true what Blake is saying, then these are bad guys. He goes on to say they didn't have an intimacy coordinator on the set
in order to clearly demonstrate that WME had sides. The same organization that had previously cashed Floyd's checks was now portraying him as the villain when Emanuel publicly ridiculed him on the Freakonomics show. But here's the worst part. If the accusations made against Baldoni are accurate, he is a horrible person.
Ari Emanuel did all this on the Freakonomics podcast. He is a true Hollywood power player, right? He's feared. However, he is not an honest arbiter in this debacle. I mean, Ryan's 10% is a lot more lucrative to the agency than Baldoni's.
Indeed, the iconic Hollywood damage control scene. Despite the fact that Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively aren't exactly scandal-free, Emanuel's take on no bad press is funny. Pretend your A-list clients are flawless angels and sacrifice the, little ones. Playing rich, ethically dubious blondes has been the foundation of Blake Lively's career, while Ryan Reynolds has made Deadpool his whole identity.
He did use the word if. If these things that Blake is saying, and I believe them to be amazing people, if they're true, then Baldoni's a terrible guy. Okay, sure, if they are, but it just doesn't seem like they are at all. Not even close.
But let's not act as though morality had anything to do with this. Ryan Reynolds is a billion-dollar asset between Aviation Gin Mintmobile and the Deadpool series, which is why Emanuel dropped Baldwin, not because he thought Lively was a moron. Reynolds is Hollywood's golden boy. and WME was never going to jeopardize their cash cow over Baldoni. This wasn't a morally just choice. Rather, it was just Hollywood policy to fire the less successful star when in question in order to safeguard the moneymaker.
Says no harassment, but he also says their issue is going to be more, can they prove that there was a smear campaign?
Speaking of clueless PR disasters, let's discuss the biggest error Blake and Ryan made in this entire mess. Their SNL 50th anniversary special appearance. Turning a lawsuit about sexual harassment into a comedy segment is the last thing you should do. But Blake and Ryan seemed to be so out of touch with reality that they thought it was a great idea to make jokes about the lawsuit live on TV.
You know, I'm unaware of anybody, frankly, whose wife has been sexually harassed and has made jokes about that type of situation.
The audience's response was harsh. During the after-party, not only did Hollywood insiders avoid them, but real A-list legends like Kevin Costner and Robert De Niro simply avoided them. Imagine entering a room full of Hollywood royalty and realizing that no one wants to be associated with you. That's where Blake and Ryan are at the moment, radioactive. Then there's Brian Fredman, Justin Baldwin's lawyer, who wasted no time in destroying them for this stunt.
That was not very positive about the alleged nose job recipient. Alleged. I gotta protect myself.
The deposition trap here is brutal because you can bet that Fredman's team will play that SNL footage in court. And when that happens, how will Blake Lively explain why she found it funny? He's right. But if Blake Lively was truly devastated by what allegedly happened to her, why would she sit there laughing about it on national TV?
Your wife accusing a guy of sexual harassment, right? That's why it's no laughing matter, sexual harassment. So,
however, it's not simply Hollywood insiders turning against them that deals the final blow. Even others who are not aware of this case are staring at Blake and Ryan, asking, wait, if this was real, why are you making jokes about it? More than 90% of internet comments criticized their SNL participation as being both tasteless and theatrical.
You know, so I think there could be some argument about whether it was leaked and shouldn't have been leaked and should they have the information or what it may be. But no matter what happens, this is a damning quote.
Blake believed she could ride the Me Too movement to victory, but now she's facing backlash from the very people she expected to support her. She expected Hollywood to rally behind her, but instead her own industry is treating her like a liability. Blake is losing not just in court, but also in public opinion.
They're all afraid of getting scooped.
They've been working on it for 5 months.
I get it.
And look, I mean, it's a real strong point.
And let's not forget that this isn't over. Baldoni isn't backing down, and Fredman is just getting started. Blake's credibility and freefall are at risk, and her SNL gaffe and strategic betrayal are publicly recorded. This lawsuit is turning out to be a complete catastrophe for her, and she is currently out of hiding places. With his $400 million lawsuit against Blake Lively, Justin Baldwin has now declared war. In all honesty, it's about time. After months of Blake circling Hollywood, as the victim, Baldwin has had enough and is suing her to harm his reputation and career.
That you might not win in court over defamation, but the audience goes, you mean you covered this for 5 months and then on a Friday night you reached out to Justin Baldoni for comment, and by the time he got back to you, you already published it?
However, it doesn't end there. The New York Times is also being sued for intentionally disseminating false information while working with Lively's shady public relations team. Let's face it, this whole thing has been a huge Hollywood publicity stunt, and now Baldoni is coming for blood.